was one of the most explosive impacts on cultural studies, which in the early stages had been concerned with class questions, therefore concerned with male questions. I'm exposed to this on both fronts. The women wanted to change the culture of the center, which was very much a boys' club. At home, we are renegotiating our marriage. It's a question of, will you shut up now? Can you keep quiet for the next 6 months, please? Don't tell me about the New Left and Edward Thompson and Reverend Williams. Let me tell you about seeing marriage as a form of slavery. And Edward Thompson were two kind of heroes of mine. Raymond Williams was important for my thought, for my political engagement, but he couldn't be a role model. Neither of them could be role models. Feminism taught me the difference between a conviction in the head and a change in how you live. It was a very, very difficult moment, both intellectually in the center and domestically at home. These are very, very new conditions under which we're existing. We don't know the connections between those conditions. So one's not trying to say that what's happening in Eastern Europe and Third World are all the same. But in every department, economic, political, cultural, social, things are changing very fast and very profoundly. The changes are not just superficial. The notion of contingency and particularity have entered and undermined all our languages that stretch across time, that are true for all societies, etc. That's what I think is gone. That is, of course, what postmodernism sometimes means. thing that has shifted for me is that you can't translate particular judgment to all the other cases, all the other instances. And when one takes it to that level, I think it's pointing to something very profound philosophically. Every new configuration contains masses of the old. I think of the new not as breaking completely with the past, always as reconfiguring the elements of the past with some elements that are new. Each time that comes, it does require a change of perspective.
We looked at how the image of industrial conflict is shaped by the way strikes are presented on television news. As we saw, news tends to concentrate mainly on the most dramatic and violent aspects of confrontation, rather than on long-term causes or consequences. All strikers are militants, all strikes are irrational, every picket line is violent, whereas every settlement looks like a victory for common sense, because it's represented as in the national interest.
Because I experienced the end point of colonialism inside my own family as a tragedy, I came not to be able to maintain the traditional distinction between what is subjective and what is objective. Once you've opened those gates, you speak, even if you're speaking about the political situation, you're speaking, as it were, allowing something from the psychic energy to flow into the words.
The summer riots of 1981 and the violence during the coal strike have increased fears of a crisis of governability. But rather than a breakdown of law and order, Paul argues that Britain is more threatened by a slow drift towards authoritarianism.
The most important sense that I have here is that there was a kind of sense of what the political conversation was about from about 1945 onwards. And that lasted, I think, in spite of the different rotation of governments and so on. And I have the sense that in the 80s, that conversation has come to a stop. I've always written as a kind of intervention in an argument. I want to turn the argument in a particular kind of way. I want to recover something which I think is being lost. It always has a kind of relation to the history of the present. I'm thinking, what does that mean now? How is it in the problem space we're inhabiting currently? We can now begin to identify a range of different processes which do tend in all kinds of societies to deliver a significant number of people at the bottom of a number of different ladders. Some of them are technological. Some of them have to do with education. Some of them have to do with race and ethnicity. Some of them have to do with single parenthood. Although the causes are multiple, what seems to be important is that they deliver a certain number of people to a multiple series of disadvantages. And then the question of permanence comes in. How on earth do people like that get themselves out? Now, they don't get themselves out of being stuck in that way by being, thrifty or getting on their bikes or any of those things. I've shifted a little bit in my understanding or analysis of Thatcherism. I think she missed the consequences of not taking care of what holds individuals together. The most profound thing she ever said is, there is no such thing as society, there are only individual men and women. And if you go into the street, or try to educate your children, or try to look after yourself when you're ill, you suddenly realize there's not just individual men and women. They're the networks of relationships which somebody has to articulate, somebody has to take care of, somebody has to fund. The question of rethinking all those different elements that have gone into the making of oneself, the different roots, and by roots I mean R-O-U-T-E-S, not R-O-O-T-S, the different pathways by which one has come to where one is. And I've come via Oxford, via English literature, via Africa, via Kingston. Now, I've come by many places, and who I am are that thing. Of all Dominica's industries, sugar is the most important and has the longest history. Columbus brought a bundle of canes with him on his second voyage in 1493. And sugar was replacing honey as the traditional sweetener. In Europe, there was a huge demand, and Hispaniola couldn't produce enough. The problem was labor, and that was solved by the Spanish system of repartimiento, rounding up the natives and making them work on the plantations.
We are in the center of the creative and cultural life of the society, and we require the jobs, the training, the opportunities, the funding. We want the path open, especially for the young people of this society, the young black people of this society, who have created in their myriad art forms, from writing, poetry, dance, music, right through to rap, created a new culture, a culture which in its variety and power astonishes now the eyes of young white people in the society, which is a mark, a sign that they are the people of the future. And that needs organization and funding. And we have to go out and get it because it's ours.
I've tried to think back to 58, to the things which I thought I knew and thought I could see. Some of them came off. One wasn't completely stupid about them, but certain things were completely unpredictable. I mean, sexual politics. The consequence of what has happened in the last 2 or 3 decades in this whole domain has undoubtedly shaken the commitment of a lot of heterosexual people to the old sexual norms without necessarily yet undermining them. People are driven into identifying themselves as a sexual minority when they confront a surrounding culture that gives a particular valorization of normality. Then if you want to contest that normality, you have to draw people together, and one of the ways of doing that is to mobilize them around an identity. There is what I would call sociological time change, which isn't a consequence of people organizing themselves or political programs. It's kind of how things settle in a society that is just different 20 years later. I think the position of women will never be the same again. I think the position of sexuality will never be the same again, which doesn't mean that there aren't horrendous periods yet to come. I just think that kind of slow glacial time has overtaken us on those kinds of questions, and the ground is shifting.
There is a common sense that Britain is being accepted as a multicultural society. I would describe this as a multicultural drift. We've just found ourselves in the situation where we're surrounded by people of different racial and ethnic backgrounds, and, well, that's what it looks like Britain is going to be. We haven't really confronted what then are the problems which that poses. Alongside that is a significant minority of British-born people who don't think that's the way in which Britain should go.
Tell me, why have they all come to this country? And some of them have come from 5 countries, 6 countries, all over the world.
You asked me a question.
Yeah.
Not long ago, you were, bombing Kosovo. And the reason why
I didn't want any part of that.
Nor did I, but that was the fact. Now, this is the result of that situation, the long-term result of that situation, in which Britain felt, rightly or wrongly, that it had to intervene. Well, as a consequence of that, people are fleeing from the situation in that part of the world. And one of the places they were to come to is to this country. Now, they may not have a genuine case, but I don't know how on earth you could describe the people by simply looking at them, just a minute, by looking in their faces as bogus. I feel the world as stranger to me than I've ever felt it before. I feel out of time for the first time in my life. The world turned in the 1970s, fundamentally turned. The end of that post-war social democratic period in Britain, the end of Keynesianism, glimpsing the end of the welfare state. If you could persuade me that all the vital energies of contemporary life in its variety across the globe finds a place within the existing system of power, then we're at the end of history. Until then, we are not. I think a certain underlying optimism is required. A pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will, Gramsci said. That means hard thought, hard graft, recognizing what the world is like, recognizing the way the terrain is set against you, and then remembering the openness of history and seeing whether one can intervene